Please let me stay your wife." It was a Friday morning when my wife, with an eerie calm, informed me that she was going out tonight after work and probably wouldn't be back until the next day. Her speech was meticulously prepared, and the rapid yet composed manner in which she delivered it immediately convinced me that there was nothing I could do to change her mind. She assured me that she still loved me, but her gaze had developed a distant, wandering look. This was my first personal encounter with marital infidelity, a concept I had previously only witnessed in movies, books, plays, and even through gossip shared by both victims and perpetrators in their real-life tales. As I stood there absorbing her carefully rehearsed eloquence, she went on about how I was strong enough to handle it, how it was unfair that she didn't have time to explore life fully before our marriage. She argued that human beings are not naturally monogamous, that society's rules about love are too rigid, that it's just love, and that she would be much more attentive to my needs in the future if I allowed her this freedom. Each sigh separating her nonsense from my unspoken responses seemed to fuel her momentum as she ventured further into the well-trodden waters of cliches. She declared that I had no choice, that she could do whatever she wanted with her body, that life is short, and she deserves all the pleasure she can get, and that she has the right to explore different colors, shapes, and tastes. Her selective menu, of course, didn't consider brain size or financial stability. She was purely aiming for physical experiences. Let me clarify. I am not suggesting that I am poorly endowed, nor would I describe myself as physically weak or lacking in character. Can one modestly claim to have at least average intelligence and significant wealth? Perhaps not. But know this, I am a rocket scientist, and my career has made me obscenely wealthy. My wife had never voiced any complaints about our life. When the former love of my life finished her statement, I felt a surge of anger. I could have reacted with the brute force of a savage beast, overwhelmed by the fury within me. I could have assumed the role of Ahab, a vengeful king with a superiority complex, obsessed with defeating the great beast. But we all know that Ahab's story ended in destruction. No, Melville offered a better model for me to emulate. The message of this story, though often unclear, had been a subject of contemplation for me throughout my life. The meaning of its strange central character suddenly became apparent when my wife asked me to kiss her goodbye. I mentally thanked Herman Melville for the bleak lesson. I would prefer not to. We've all experienced jaw-dropping moments. You can't navigate life without encountering instances where everything is so surreal that you are rendered speechless. You are so stunned that you feel compelled to say something. You have to say something. Yet your brain struggles to process what you've just witnessed, leaving you without the words to express your thoughts. My wife's jaw dropped, her mouth grotesquely wide open in shock. Her reaction was almost theatrical, a blend of disbelief and horror that seemed to stretch time itself. I felt an overwhelming desire to launch into a passionate discourse about morals, oaths, and the sanctity of our marriage vows. I wanted to express my devoted love, and if need be, threaten her with the consequences of her actions. All these emotions bubbled up inside me like a volatile concoction ready to explode. But somehow, miraculously, I managed to contain them and simply said, I'd rather not do that. Often, people possess a power that is underestimated and rarely considered a strength: the gift of self-control. There is great strength in maintaining control, and in that moment, I found solace in it. My simple refusal was my way of exerting control over the situation, a quiet assertion of my will. Naturally, this led to a new tirade from her. She ranted about how I didn't respect her needs, accused me of harboring immature resentment about various things, and culminated in her declaration: "You're going to have to accept my decision or do without me." My response remained steady and unwavering. I'd rather not. I noticed a crack in her armor as she began to falter slightly, her initial bravado giving way to uncertainty. She was trying her best to look determined, but I could see the hesitation creeping in. I didn't threaten, beg, cry, or explode with indignation. My calm resistance seemed to disarm her. This led her to try a different approach, negotiation. She promised she wouldn't stay out all night on her first date, assuring me she would come home and reaffirm her deep love for me. My response was unchanged, my resolve unbroken. I'd rather not do that. This stunning phrase was like an encore to our confrontation, each repetition reinforcing its power. My wife shifted from a soft-spoken mistress to the lawyer she had once aspired to be. She had struggled with the bar exam as much as I had struggled with this situation, and now she tried to wield her legal knowledge against me. I was pretty sure she didn't remember one of her law school classes the year before we got married, where the entire class drafted prenuptial agreements for personal use. She had taken it very seriously at the time, and the contract was duly signed, notarized, and fully enforceable. When she launched into another tirade about how if I wanted a divorce, she would take my house, my bank account, and even my trust fund, and end up in my house, in my bed, sleeping with whoever she wanted, whenever she wanted, and that I would pay for it, my response was still simple and resolute. I'd rather not. She didn't come back that night so I could reclaim her body. She didn't come home Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. As the sun set on Sunday night, she dragged herself into the house, looking like a wild animal that had just been driven onto the rocks. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes rumpled, and there was a wild, almost desperate look in her eyes. She dumped her bag on the patio next to the grill, where I had a nice sizzling ribeye cooking. The aroma of the steak mingled with the tension in the air, but I didn't even bother to look in her direction. My silence spoke volumes. "I figured you'd rather not kiss me now," she said, her voice strained. I continued with my task, smearing marinade on the sizzling meat and turning the corn a quarter turn, focusing on the familiar routine to keep my mind off the tension between us. "Would you mind cooking one of those for me?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with a hint of desperation. "I'd rather not," I replied evenly, not looking up from the grill. "That's right, I should have known. Are you ever going to say anything else besides, 'I'd rather not'?" "That gets tiresome very quickly," she snapped, frustration evident in her tone. I turned to her, ready to respond, but she cut me off. "No, don't even talk about it. I'm tired. It's better if you don't do it. That's the punishment. It's going to be a long night tonight because we have to talk about it, and you're going to have to say something." "Nothing. Is that really the end of it? You're going to file for divorce." Her voice wavered, and I could see the pain in her eyes. 2 years of dating in college, 3 years while I was in law school, and 2 years after that. 5 years of marriage and 7 years together, and you give that up in 2 weekends. Well, I researched something else. I needed it. It's been eating away at me for years. I thought it was all settled when I married you. I love you and will love you forever, but I couldn't be around another guy without wondering how good he was in bed, questioning how it felt to be asterisk fixed asterisk instead of cherished. I needed to feel and understand the differences, to be the girl on the cover of a love story with a rough cowboy who does whatever he wants to her, or where the lord of the manor exercises his rights over me, a humble peasant girl. I'm sorry, but I couldn't help myself. You're a wonderful husband and a wonderful lover, but I should have tried other men. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. Please don't just stand there in silence. Say something. I placed the steak and corn on a toasted bun, added another grilled peach on top, and finally turned to look at my wife for the first time since her return. "I prefer not to do that." "No, baby, don't don't do that. Don't be so cold to me. Yell at me, threaten me, hit me, just don't ignore me. I know I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'll do anything for you, just take me back. I'd rather not. Things got heated after that. No, I didn't grill her a steak, although for a moment, I considered completely chairing something for her. In the days that followed, she tried to talk, but every request she made was met with a quietly polite response. I'd rather not do that. She asked me what I would have preferred to do instead, to which I simply shrugged. I didn't leave the room if she tried to talk to me. I didn't ask her what had happened. You could tell she was desperate to gain my favor. The following Friday, she came home a little late, talking a mile a minute about a happy hour with her coworkers, where all she did was drink and laugh. Then she noticed there was nothing on the table, and I was dressed to leave the house. What's going on? Are we going somewhere? Oh, wait, you're not taking me with you, are you? Is this really my punishment? Are you going back to my place? Her voice trembled with a mix of fear and hope. I shook my head and gave her the standard answer. I'd rather not, and left. I went out to dinner with my parents, who were in town for the weekend. I put them up at the Hilton by the river because I didn't want to involve them in our drama at home. They, of course, already knew all about it and were happy to have a wonderful evening with dinner on a river cruise. I got home at 10:30 p.m., still looking like $1,000,000. I was met by a crying wife. I went to bed without a word. I don't know what was going on in her head, but the next morning I woke up to the smell of breakfast she had made. This time, my wife didn't question me about anything before she spoke. Last night was awful. You left without me, and I was left home alone. I couldn't get rid of the thought of you being in town with another woman. I felt so awful. Now I realize how you must have felt when I was gone all weekend. If I ask you a question, will you answer me honestly? Were you with another woman? Considering I dated both of my parents and my mom is definitely a woman, I answered honestly, yes. Her face reflected mixed emotions. She now knew that I had been with another woman last night, and that filled her mind with anxiety. On the other hand, I had said something else, something new. It was a good sign. Asterisk asterisk morning routine and golf outing asterisk asterisk. I began my day with a simple breakfast, savoring the quiet moment. After finishing, I made my way to the garage to pick up my golf clubs, knowing a peaceful morning on the greens awaited me. My father, despite being in his 40s, still possessed the vigor and skill of his younger days. His swing was as powerful and precise as ever, reminiscent of his time coaching the Special Olympics and serving as the state team director. Our conversation flowed freely over various topics. Though we both carefully avoided the subject of my marriage, evening preparations, and unexpected encounter. I returned home just in time to shower and change into my tuxedo, preparing for an evening that promised to be significant. As I descended the stairs, ready to leave, my wife intercepted me. Her eyes widened, and her jaw dropped when she saw me dressed so formally. "You must be really special to get a night worthy of a tuxedo," she remarked, a mixture of surprise and hurt in her voice. I nodded, offering a small smile. "Honey, no one compares to you. When you dress like that, all of our anniversary dinners have been unforgettable." She tried to maintain her composure, but couldn't hide the pain in her eyes. She's a lucky girl, whoever she is. I don't suppose you want to share with me. I'd rather not, I replied gently, trying to keep the conversation from turning sour. Her expression shifted to one of regret and vulnerability. I understand. I realize I screwed up. I tossed you aside and then spent the weekend humiliating you. I should never have done that. Let me tell you about my weekend. Taking a deep breath, she began her story. On Friday, my date took me to Wendy's for a burger before a concert. He said we had great seats, so I dressed up nicely. You saw me, I looked good. But when we got there, our seats were so far from the stage that I couldn't see the singers, even with binoculars. He made me buy a beer, even though I was driving. It was my car and my gas, and then I bought dinner. My first date in ages ended up with the cheapest jerk ever. On the way home, he started groping me. When we got to a red light in our neighborhood, I jumped out of the car and went to McGuire's Lounge, where a blues band was playing. The jerk tried to follow me, but Eric, the bouncer, stopped him. She paused, her face reflecting the pain of her experiences. I told Eric the guy was a creep and was following me. Can you believe that? Like I promised him anything. Inside the lounge, I saw a guy I knew from work. We hung out, but he got so drunk I had to drive him home. When we arrived at his place, he passed out, leaving me to sleep on his couch. I woke up to him crawling all over me, promising to make it up to me. I told him off, questioning how he could ever make it up to me with his pathetic attempts. She sighed deeply, her eyes searching mine for understanding. Instead of appreciating what I had at home, I decided to reassert my femininity and sexuality. I went to another bar, ready to hook up with some guy, but his wife barged in, furious and red-faced. To throw her off, I slapped him and yelled, "So you're married." Ironically, I didn't even take off my rings. She laughed bitterly. Then I went to the Clam Shack bar on the beach. A man approached me, flirting sweetly and making conversation. He seemed genuine, looking me in the eye instead of ogling my body. I was about to fall for his charm when two little kids came running up, shouting, "Grandpa, Grandpa, there you are." He vanished quickly. She shook her head, her voice growing softer. I ended up getting a room in an old motel behind the Clam Shack. I bought a bottle of wine and went out on the balcony for some quiet time. Below me, a group of single and divorced women were talking about their dating failures. They shared stories about misogynists, older leers, and cheap men. They discussed dating men from different cultures, races, and religions, and how size didn't matter as much as a caring lover. They all agreed that if you find a man who's both caring and devoted, you should hold on to him forever. Her eyes filled with tears. I almost left then to come home to you, but I stayed listening to their conversation. I spent the rest of the night thinking about you. I woke up on the balcony feeling the sun burn my skin. I felt guilty and stiff from sleeping on a chaise lounge. My stomach was upset from the cheap food and wine, and my head ached from everything. I arranged for a late checkout, showered, got dressed, and came home. With a plea for forgiveness, she looked at me, her eyes pleading. Honey, that night I walked out of our house with a firm intention of cheating on you, but I didn't. The universe was on your side, baby. It made it clear that I was meant to be with you, only you. Please forgive me. Please let me still be your wife. Please, let's forget my transgression and go back to our happy life. I felt a wave of sympathy for her, but not love. As I looked into her tear-filled eyes, I gave her my answer. Asterisk, asterisk, epilogue, asterisk, asterisk. I didn't tell her about the other woman I was dating, who was actually my mother. I didn't tell her if I believed her sad story about how her dreams crumbled that weekend. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't sure I did. I didn't say anything else. She didn't give up on me, trying to get back into my heart. I avoided her by traveling for work or staying out late. I only answered her questions with a nod or a shake of my head. I slept in a different room and ate at different times. Eventually, she got tired of the struggle. We never divorced, but she moved somewhere else. I think I'll put an end to it someday, but for now, I'd rather not. The end.